You move to a new city and you have no friends. Years ago, I moved to Bogota, Colombia. Okay, so we're gonna start the 24 hours in Bogota actually at night. And when I moved there, I used every excuse in the book to not make friends in the city. I had to work, my Spanish was lackluster. My daily routine looked like 6 espresso shots, basically cross-eyed looking at the screen editing videos, followed by 1 hour of self-care in the shower to feel something. But I was alone. Like, I had isolated myself out traveling, and I think part of me was embarrassed to admit that I didn't have any friends. And I found that just making friends in new cities is hard. It's confronting. The part of us that has to send a DM to somebody that we don't know to be like, hey, do you want to be friends? Do you want to make a sandcastle together? So in this video, I want to explain how I made new friends in cities across the world, and especially how I made a soul tribe in Denver within like the first 3 months of moving here. The first step I found in finding my tribe was finding myself. To find your tribe, you have to find yourself first. Go inward. Ask the questions this way. If you're in a new city and you're like, man, I just don't think these people here are very friendly. Everyone has their own friend group already. I may just move back home or move again. Well, let me let you in on a secret. Wherever you go, there you are. Instead of prolonging the issue, let's ask the harder questions. Start by going inward. Who am I? What do I want? And how do I get it? It matters in relationships. And there are 101 books out there talking about identity and finding yourself. So I'm not going to dive deep into this, but I want to give you a few tools that you can apply. And the first one is an ideal ordinary week. This is a really simple activity. Go to a year out from today in your calendar. It's probably blank, and fill in the time blocks of what an ideal ordinary week would look like. This isn't vacation. This isn't what you wish you were doing in the Bahamas. This is like, okay, if I'm at home working my typical life, what does my ideal week look like? When do you get up? How often do you exercise? What do your eating habits look like? How many nights a week do you spend by yourself, with friends? Do they include game nights? What do you do on the weekends? And chunk out the major blocks of time. Don't get super granular here. You don't need 15-minute blocks of like, text Ryan about that video I watched. But what is the overall essence? What does the overall layout of your week look like? I mean, the main reason you're doing this is to see what is valuable to you. Where do you want to spend your time? If you want to dive deeper into this, I'll put a link down in the description to a video explaining it in detail. The second activity I want to give you here is a simple journal prompt, and it's, what activities do you do that add life to your life? In other words, what are the healthy habits that you've cultivated? Do you work out? Do you work out in the mornings? Do you work out in the evenings? Do you eat from home to save money? Are you really focused on eating healthy? Do you work at coffee shops because it helps you be in a creative space? Are you a cold plunge sauna person? What are the things that you're doing to take care of yourself? And just take note of them for a second. These activities, what you write down in this list, is super important for the last step in this video. Outside of that, go out and read. I'm telling you, there are so many resources out there to help you answer those 3 questions. Who am I? What do I want? And how do I get it? Go figure out who you are. And then take that and bring that back for the second step. Pay for alignment. I have an unpopular opinion, and it's that you should pay for friends. I used to hate Greek life. I remember when I showed up at CSU my freshman year, and I thought, these Greek life motherfuckers are so dumb. They're paying for friends. Like, I don't need that. I'm better than that. And 10 years later, my perspective has shifted a little bit. What I'm not telling you to do is slide into somebody's DMs and be like, yo, I'll pay you $1,000 a week to be my friend. Although that would be a hell of a business for them. What I'm telling you is to pay for the activities that align with what you found out in the first step. Pay for courses, pay for masterminds, pay for conferences, pay for summits and retreats, pay for local events. Pay for things that align with the activities that you want to be doing. Pay for a gym membership that gets you into group classes. Don't just pay for a $10 Planet Fitness membership if you care about your health. Pay the money to get around other people who care about the same thing. I mean, we pay money for gas that goes in our car because we care about transportation. We value transportation. I can't imagine you're somebody who's like, yeah, gas, I want to pay for gas. But you pay for it because you value transportation. You pay for healthy food because you care about your body and your vessel. But then we have this weird thing in our minds that says, but I'm not gonna pay for my friends. I don't need to do that. I'll go to a free meetup. I'll go to this networking event. I'll get the free version of Tinder. But do you not value friends? Do you not value your relationships to other people? Especially if the quote is true that if you show me your 5 closest people, I'll show you your future. If that's true, that should be one of the most valuable things that you spend your money on, that you invest in. At least I've found that to be true. And then the next step, once you pay for said experience, for whatever it is, show up. I'll never forget when I landed back in Colorado after 2 years of running abroad. I landed back on my grandparents' couch. I was broke. I was depressed. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know if I wanted to be back in Colorado. And I had just saw another friend flying through on my connection flight in California. And she said, yo, one of my sisters lives out in Denver. Like, you two should get connected. You should check her out. So I sent her a message and she was like, yeah, I actually have a breathwork event coming up like next week. You should come through. I was like, okay. I bought the ticket. I did the thing. And on the night of, I almost bailed. I was like, man, that's a far drive. I don't know if it's going to be worth it. It's kind of late. Plus, I was living in this funk. Like, I was swimming in this pool of syrup, like the guaranteed diabetes Aunt Jemima type of thick syrup. And my mind fed me all the stories of why I should not go. Thankfully, through the skin on my teeth, I showed up. And it was that event, it was that experience, it was that connection point that foundationally created a lot of the soul tribe that I have today, 3 years later, in Denver, in Colorado, and abroad. And the breathwork facilitator and I actually fell madly in love for the next year. It was a pivotal moment, but it only happened because I decided to show up. And I see it time after time facilitating Dynamic Dinner. I run an experience here in Denver that I've been running for the last 2 years. We've hosted over 500 strangers for dinner, and people buy tickets almost every single dinner and don't show up. I don't get an email, I don't get a message. I can only imagine that the majority of them realize to some extent, wow, I want deeper connection. I want to meet people in the city, and I buy this ticket, and then the night of comes and they deprioritize it. They go, it's gonna be awkward. I don't think anybody's really gonna like me anyways. I don't know if my people are there, and they don't show up. If you find something that aligns with who you are, it's worth going to and showing up as yourself. My invitation / reminder is when you show up, be yourself. Show up as you, not the version of you that you think everybody else wants you to be. When you show up in the room, listen to your internal voice, your internal guide. If somebody in the room is drawing curiosity out of you, go talk to them and be like, yo, I don't know what this is, but you seem really interesting. Can I introduce myself? Ask them a simple question. Just don't ask, how are you? Hoping that they'll say good. Say, why did you come to this? Do you know anybody else here? What's your dream? Start with something genuine that gets just under the surface. And if you find somebody in the room that conversation continues to flow with easily, ask for their information. Lean into the vulnerability and the humility of saying, hey, I'm new to the city and I don't really know anybody here, but you seem really interesting. I would love to buy you a coffee and get to know you more. Are you game for that? Ask for what you want and trust the other person that they're going to do the same. It's going to come off way less needy if you're just honest. Number 4 is check in. You build connections off of interests. You got in the room, but build relationships off of essence. Find the people who feel right in your body. This essence is a value set. It's a life path. And sometimes it's just a feeling. You have a conversation with somebody and you're like, man, this feels good. I can't really explain it any further than that, but that's the essence. Build on that. When you leave the event, ask a few simple questions to yourself. How did those people make me feel? Was there anybody that really stood out to me? And do I still want to follow up with the people that I talked about following up with? Or was I just trying to get out of an awkward conversation? Have an honest look inward afterwards to check in. And once you do that, reach out, do the thing, send the message. This is where networking ends and meeting new friends kind of begins. I've been to several networking events. Actually, one that comes to mind is I was up at Boulder Startup Week earlier this year and had this like awkward conversation with a guy who I could tell was like trying to mentor me on a first date. And he sent me a follow-up email after Startup Week and said, "Hey, it was great to meet you. Here's my book. Here's this podcast you should listen to. Would love to have a conversation and connect after." And I was like, wow, this guy has some balls. And honestly, it was inspiring. He didn't give a fuck. He did not care about what my judgments were going to be towards him, which I have a lot of respect for. And I think for a lot of us meeting friends, that's the energy that we're missing. You don't need to follow up with everybody at the event and be like, yo, you want to be best friends? But we often struggle just sending a text saying, hey, I thought you were interesting. Would you be game to get a coffee? Because we're afraid of the judgment. We're afraid of what we think they're going to say. Send the text. And invite them into one of those activities, one of those additive activities that you wrote down earlier. If you walk in the park for your fitness, invite them to join you for a walk. If you work out or you run, invite them to do that with you. If you're saving money by eating at home, invite them for lunch. If you're a cold plunge sauna cat, invite them to that. Invite them into your life, into something additive. It doesn't have to be a coffee date. It doesn't have to be going out for dinner. And usually the more different, the better. I remember when I joined the Rotary Club of Denver when I moved up here. And I didn't just join any club. I joined the most prestigious club in Denver. We met at the Denver Country Club. It was collared shirts, no hats, no denim. It had to be slacks. I barely paid for the Rotary dues. And I was walking around a room full of people that looked like my grandparents. And I remember connecting with this guy named Jim. And I thought, man, he asks really genuine questions. I feel like he's present with me. He has this levity, this positivity in his energy. Would love to get to know him more. So I said, Jim, are you game to get lunch? Just you and I after this. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. But there was only one problem. Two problems, really. I was broke. And the second one was I lived in a 421 square foot studio apartment downtown. I had this couch bed table that was literally this futon that laid out into a bed, and then I would make it a table by putting a cloth, aka a blanket or a sheet on top of it. So I said, yeah, Jim, you want to come over to my home office and have lunch? And he showed up and he was like, oh. And I had the whole spread laid out, and Jim and I sat on the floor and had lunch. And it was one of the most meaningful conversations that I had with any of the Rotarians that I met in that club. I still to this day could text or call Jim and have a conversation about his business in Portland or ask him about dynamic dinners. I would genuinely call Jim a friend, but I still owe the Rotary Club dues. That's it for this one. Happy hunting friends in your new city. And remember that wherever you go, there you are. If you want to learn more about Dynamic Dinner and what we're doing with that, I'll put a link down in the description. And I write a weekly letter called Fearless Framing that talks about living life more alive, healthy, wealthy, and wise. If you're interested in that, I'll also put that down in the link in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Wow, this is mucky at the bottom. This has been sitting for a while. We need the goods. How's that sound?
Sexy.